All right, everybody, welcome in. It is the Monday edition of Section 1904. It's estimated that there are about 8 billion people living on planet Earth. And according to research, there's been about 117 billion, give or take a few hundred million, that have walked the face of the Earth. And now only six of these people ever, all time, have won golf's Grand Slam. And Rory McIlroy is one of them. Having achieved it on Sunday, what I think was the highlight of the weekend, sports-wise. Welcome in. Padres shut out the Colorado Rockies at home at Petco Park. They are off to an incredible start, 13-3, after 3 consecutive shutouts against their NOS rivals. SDFC went on the road and played an exciting match against the Colorado Rapids. And yet, all of that, I think, John, as we get going here, is somewhat trumped, if you will, by Rory McIlroy winning at Augusta National. What a weekend it was. Good to talk with you.
Good to talk with you. I'm excited to start here for this very specific moment. And I'll give a shout out to another podcast while I do it, which is the Zach Lowe Show, which used to be called The Lowe Post when it was at ESPN. I'm very happy to have Zach Lowe back doing podcasts because Zach is one of the people in sports media that I adore for the reason of Zach appreciates the stories, the narratives, the emotions, way more than the transactions and the trade demands and the free agency moves. And he always makes it a point to try and bring it back and say, this is why we're here. This is why we watch. This is why we spend all this time and energy getting excited about this and thinking about this and talking about this and making friendships over this for moments like this. And not only are there 6 men who have ever done the Grand Slam in the PGA, but it was, let me see if I can do my math right, 34 years between Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods getting it, and it was 25 years since anyone else got it, that being Tiger Woods before Rory McIlroy got it yesterday. And just that, watching him like basically try and avoid a nervous breakdown so that he can win the Masters, and then when it seemed 4 or 5 different times that it had blown up in his face, and he finally he sinks the putt, he wins it. He's the 6th man ever to get the Grand Slam, and he just collapses on the ground and starts like sobbing, like heaving sobs. That's the type of stuff that, I told you kind of earlier in the day that I was focused more on Padres. I kind of had the Masters on in the background. I switched them at one point, put the Masters on the big TV, gave it the sound, because I was like, this is why I care about sports. Moments like this. I don't want to miss this if it happens. And then it happened, and it felt so magical. And I'm so happy for Rory. I've always loved Rory. He's probably been my favorite golfer since Tiger Woods kind of fell apart physically and maybe mentally. And I'm so happy for Rory. And he's talked, as one would after this, endlessly about how for 10 years, this has basically been this stalking horse that has tortured him. And now it's finally, the weight is lifted off him, and he can basically call himself one of the 6 greatest men's golfers of all time. And I'm happy that I was able to watch it and experience it in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, all of those things I think are absolutely on the nose. Gene Sarazen, Ben Hogan, Gary Player, Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods, now Rory McIlroy. And to me, John, it's you just said it all really well right there. I think people that have listened to the radio know that I do like watching golf. And I've watched a lot less of it since we've had all of the drama between LIV and the PGA Tour. It has been a bit of a turnoff for me. And I don't know that I would have flipped over and watched this if it were any other golfer other than Rory McIlroy, because like you, I've really, really enjoyed watching Rory in his career, and I'm rooting for him. And I openly consider myself a Rory McIlroy fan for numerous reasons, including most recently, I think the stand that he took in defense of the PGA Tour, which has made him a target, an online target. If you were to scroll through some of the social media channels during this round, man, you would have been surprised if you thought, well, everybody sort of likes Rory, don't they? Who doesn't like Rory McIlroy? You'd be surprised how many people don't. But that being said, he's not been shy with his opinions about LIV, about the people that are affiliated with LIV. He's not been shy with his opinions about that, and I appreciate it. So, I'm sure for some that's political commentary. I don't consider it that way at all. The whole episode thing has just turned me off a little bit from golf. And I feel bad about that because, I have friends who cover the sport, and I've enjoyed watching the sport over the years. Steve Sands of the Golf Channel and NBC Sports is going to join us here on Section 1904. so we can talk a little bit about it. But it was so much more than a golf story, right? I think that's what you were saying. It just felt like it was bigger than a golf story. I'm not going to sit here and go stroke by stroke and say, hey, well, did you see what he did on the 14th? Or what about that shot that he hit on the 16th? There was so much drama where, you talked about him not having a breakdown when he was out there on the golf course. How many people that were watching that, whether you're a Rory McIlroy fan or not, were feeling the tension and the drama? And your point about what happens when he sinks the winning putt on the first playoff hole against Justin Rose, when he just falls down on the green in a heap and starts crying, to me, I mean, how do you function when you've got that much inner turmoil going on? How do you function as a human being on a golf course when you've got that much emotion coursing through your body? And it's coursing through his body because the second he doesn't have any reason to hold it in any longer, he loses complete control of everything,
Yeah.
right? Like, think about how much energy and emotion and how much anxiety and fill in the blank with a million other words. How much of that is going through his body over the span of the 5 hours that you're watching this on Sunday, only to get to that point where he sinks the putt. He's won the Masters, he's won the career Grand Slam, and he completely loses control and drops to his knees and is uncontrollably sobbing out there on the green, on the 18th green, on the first playoff hole. I just don't like where how it will never cease to amaze me when it comes to professional athletes, whether it's this sport, which is a little bit different. Pro football, American football is a little bit different, right? Like, it's a violent sport, so oftentimes you have outlets for what it is that you're trying to keep inside of you. Baseball, we always talk about it, the whole mental side of the game. But with golf, like there's an old saying, I forgot who said it, but all the violence is on the inside. Like in football, all the violence is out there. In basketball, like, it's physical. Guys are elbowing each other. The playoffs are about to start. It's going to get super physical. But in golf and in tennis, the things I love about those sports, all of the violence is on the inside of your body. And when you watch that guy go down like that, it makes me marvel at how much professional athletes are, how capable they are of controlling their emotions, because you can see what happens the second he no longer has to control his emotions. He totally loses control in the situation. And I just thought that was great theater. And then, for CBS, I don't know how much longer you stuck around. Like, I was waiting to get out of the house to go on a bike ride with Leah. And, she was like waiting for me. And of course I want to watch this. And then, like, just for Jim Nance, maybe the best bit of broadcasting I've ever seen is Jim Nance just not saying a word from the time that Rory McIlroy picks himself up off the ground on the 18th, and he walks through that entire crowd. And there's this 4K camera, and it's on him for like 3-4 minutes, and nobody's saying anything. It's just Rory, tears in his eyes, walking, stopping, handshaking, high-fiving, fist bumping, doing all that sort of stuff, having some of his fellow golfers come out there and greet him and congratulate him. His fellow Irish golfer Shane Lowry came out there. That was Hollywood. That was
Yeah.
amazing television from the time that the round itself was incredibly dramatic and up and down and all of it. But from the time that he composes, he gets up, he stands up, and he goes and he sees his wife and his daughter. And then he starts walking over to where you got to go sign the scorecard. And, they just had this 4K camera on him for what felt like 4 or 5 minutes. I don't know how long it actually was. And nobody said anything. It was
Yeah.
just everybody saying congratulations to Rory. I mean, that's as good of sports television production, I think, as I've seen in recent memory. It was so great just to watch it, and it just felt very real and it felt very raw. And I was there for it. Like, I was there for every single second of that. But man, John, I'll tell you, we're talking about this. It just, I think it's one of the things that like you just have to marvel at when it comes to professional athletes. How do you walk? How do you have the composure to do anything when you've got that much built up inside of you, and you're able to somehow just keep it compartmentalized until the point where you no longer have to do it? And then you see what you see when he sinks the match winning putt, and he goes on to now reside in golf's immortality.
Yeah, you said a lot there. I want to respond to a fair amount of it. Number one, you nailed it. Just the compartmentalization, right? And you could see that when it was off a tee or middle of the fairway, he could think about his swing, right? Make sure I get to this place, come through, make sure I make strong contact with it. And his swing was perfect. The putting is really where he was falling apart. And that the putting is so much more about thinking than it is about the swinging part. You have to think about, what line am I trying to hit? How much power do I want to put in this? The swing mechanics don't matter nearly as much. Not that we're golf experts, but you could see that he was starting to unravel mentally, because the putting was where he really fell apart. Um, I'm sorry, did you just get hit by like a giant earthquake?
Yeah,
Oh
I can
my
feel
god,
it.
I think my house is gonna fall down.
I can definitely feel it here.
Is that your wife
Yeah.
screaming?
Yep.
Let's pause this. Okay, now that everything
So
has.
you were saying, yeah. I mean, it was such a massive moment in golf that the world is still shaking as a
Yes.
result. No, listen, I don't want to make any jokes here because I don't even know what it is
Yeah,
that
that
just
that could be
happened. But
bad. Yeah.
yeah, it is just a little bit past 10 o'clock, and John felt the earthquake first. And where you live, you're what part of town exactly are you in? Rancho
I'm in
Carlsbad.
Carlsbad,
Carlsbad.
the La Costa part of Carlsbad,
Okay.
kind of near San Marcos.
Okay, and I'm down in Imperial Beach, so it took about a second and a half for me to really feel it. But this house shook pretty good where we are, so we just checked in with our neighbors. People are a little frazzled, but I think people are okay where we are. So that's the good news here, and I hope that that's going to be the case for everybody. I just took a quick scroll. Pretty massive earthquake. What did you say? A 6.0? It is
Si-
the early
6.0 in
measurement.
Ramona. Yeah, out in Ramona.
Oof. And they even like the phone. My phone gave me an alert. I don't
Yeah.
remember that ever happening before.
I think
But
that's new-ish technology. But I got one of those too, on my phone. That was, yeah, that was jarring, and uh, we're gonna have to shake that off.
pun
All right,
intended.
point intended.
Pun
Okay, I
intended. Shake that off. Yeah, there
shake
you
that
go.
off. I do remember what I wanted to say before my house tried to disconnect itself from the earth.
By the way, can I just
Um,
tell you a quick story here? Because the
yeah,
first earthquake that I was ever in California, I was on the radio with Philly Billy Wendell.
that's funny. I was about to say, I hope that that was nobody's first earthquake, because you never want your first earthquake to be quite that scary.
Yeah,
That
that
was a
was
big one.
that was yeah.
What year?
I don't know. It would have been like 2003. All of a sudden, we had these lights. We had these lights that were hanging from the studios at 1090, and they just started going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So I know that there's been a bigger one that I've been through here. There was that 7.2 Easter Sunday
I
one.
remember
I
the
want to
Easter one.
say,
Yeah.
late 2000s, somewhere in that range. I was at a grocery store in Mission Valley. I don't know if it's Ralph's or Vaughn's or whatever, but we were in the grocery store, and you could just sort of see like the footage. You could start seeing things coming off the shelves.
Oh my
Right. I
god.
remember at first I was like, is there a plane flying overhead? Why would a plane be flying this low over this grocery store in Mission Valley? Then all of a sudden I just started seeing things coming off the shelves. And the manager got on the PA system. It was like, earthquake, get out, everybody get out, everybody get out. And everything
Wow.
started sort of shaking there. So that was to me
That's
always the one that was the strongest that I've ever been in. But this one was up there. And when
this
you
one was up
started
there.
saying it, it was kind of creepy
Yeah.
because it hadn't yet found its way down here. So I
Yeah.
had about a second and a half, like 2 seconds to say, are we going to get it like John's getting it? And
And then you
again,
did.
we did.
I'm gonna
You could
try
hear
and
my wife in the background, couldn't you? Because she was
I
on a
did.
call.
I My wife was also on a call. I popped out to make sure she was okay, and I heard the other people going, "Rebecca, where'd you go?" And then I heard her go like, "Oh, I went under the table because I'm protecting myself."
Woof. All
Um,
right. Well, there you go. Podcasting during an earthquake.
yeah, that's fun times. Actually, the Easter Sunday earthquake, I had just moved back to California from Philly, and I was in Northridge for the first time in my life. I was in Northridge, and I was like, "You Northridge from like the big earthquake?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." Like some friends had moved up there, and so I went up. I was visiting them, and I was like, "Man, all I know Northridge from is that huge earthquake." And then while I was there, the Easter earthquake happened, and I was like, "Oh God, it's happening again! I'm getting stuck in Northridge because of." Anyway, let's move on. Let's go back to Rory
All right.
because again, I just want to applaud Jim Nance and the CBS people who decided to get out of the way. I also want to applaud whatever boom mic operator there was that was able to pick up everything Rory was saying to his friends and his family. Um, and Rory, like, this is part of the reason we love Rory, and he's not necessarily a throwback, but these guys used to be more plentiful than they are, which is Rory was just a human in that moment, right? Like, he was a human during the game when he was trying to keep it all together. He was a human when he collapsed at the end. He was a human as he was walking through and getting congratulations from golfers and family and friends. And too often these days, because our star athletes are told that they're going to be star athletes when they're like 5 years old, they practice these things, right? It's robotic for them and it doesn't feel comfortable as a result. The example I will give you is Jason Tatum. After Jason Tatum from the Boston Celtics won the title last year, a lot of the NBA community made fun of him because all of his celebrations were copying old celebrations. He copied the Kevin Garnett anything is possible celebration. He copied a Kobe celebration. He copied someone else's celebration. And everyone was just like, dude, just be yourself. Like, we just want to see you and your human feelings in this moment. We don't want to see the stuff that you rehearsed in your bedroom when you were 14. And Rory gave us the human moment, right? And my favorite one was, he had kind of been meandering around for a few minutes, and he was obviously surrounded by some friends, and he was talking about like, wow, I didn't know if I was going to make it, but now we're here and I'm so happy. And there was a quick pause in the conversation, and he kind of looked around and he went, well, I got to go get a green jacket. And everyone just cheered and he walked away. And I was like, what a cool, like, yes, the moment is he wins the Masters, he collapses, he cries, right? But it's 5 minutes later and he's the coolest guy in the room. Once again, going like, oh, I got to go see about a green jacket. They got to fit me and all that. Like, it was a very human day. And golf is at its best when it's most human. This is why, like, despite the fact that The Legend of Bagger Vance, I don't know if you've ever seen it as a movie,
Yep.
has gotten somewhat problematic because people refer to it as one of the quote unquote magical Negro movies because it has a black man who has magic and can't just be a regular human being. But that movie does a good job of showing you that like golf is at its absolute best when when you're dealing with the to steal your phrase that you don't remember where you got it from, when you're dealing with the violence inside of you. And that's what we saw from Rory yesterday, dealing with the violence inside of him. And it was special. It was a special, special moment. Not quite as special as the 6.0 earthquake, like 10 miles away. It's worth pointing out that this notification we got on our phones says earthquake detected, drop cover, hold on, protect yourself.
Yeah.
Like that's a
Yeah.
little, that's dire, man. But
It does. It did feel a little extreme for
I hope
sure.
everyone's safe. I
And
hope
then
everyone's
even
safe.
just a quick scroll through Twitter, I saw Scott Lewis, voice of San Diego, said expected day of aftershocks. So
Yeah, probably.
good
Wouldn't be
news for
surprised.
everybody. I guess I'll
Yeah.
skip that second cup of coffee here this morning because that one gave me the
Yeah.
jolt that I needed.
Yeah. I'm already a little
Yeah, I
jittery.
mean,
Yeah.
and that's the other thing about the sport too that I really like. And I know for a lot of people, and I would hear it all throughout the years, like, really golf? Come on, man! Like, what are we doing? And I get like there's a reputation, right? Like not everybody grew up like Phil Mickelson, some country club kid, person of incredible privilege, who got to go to the country club and got to work on his game and probably got to hire all sorts of swing coaches and things like that. And I thought Nance did a really good job down the stretch. Like Nance was setting it up for Rory to win this on the 72nd hole, and he was talking about how his parents, they're blue collar, just outside of Belfast, how they work so that they can give Rory these opportunities to play. Golf in the U.S. is often thought of as a bit elitist
Yeah.
and country club, like I said, and from people of privilege. And sometimes the European golfer, it's not that way at all. It's a working person sport. It's a blue collar sport. The sport of privilege in Europe is often rugby. So golfers and football players, soccer players, these are players who oftentimes are working class, a little bit more humble, all that sort of stuff, right? Blue collar, those kind of neighborhoods, et cetera. And I thought they did a good job explaining that is who Rory really is. Not that Rory needs an introduction. I think people know. He had won 4 major tournaments beforehand. This now being his 5th, which oddly enough, I would have lost this bet that he now moves into a tie with amongst others Brooks Koepka. I was like, what? Brooks Koepka had more
Brooks had a
majors than
great year at one point.
I think he had more major championships than Rory McIlroy.
That's
I
crazy.
lost sight of that. But I thought they did a good job of explaining like this is who Rory really is deep down. That this is where he comes from. In
Yeah.
case you didn't know, because it's been 11 years since he's won a major championship, And I thought that was really, really good from them. So yeah, and then you learn that there's been so much pressure on Rory to dump his caddy, and they did a good job talking about how loyal he's been to his caddy. His caddy's name is Harry Diamond, and that these guys are best friends. They've been together forever. They were the best men at each other's weddings. So that just gives you a little glimpse into who Rory is. He's had some real flaws with his relationships and such, and almost going through a divorce, and then there's his wife and his daughter Poppy, and so there was just a lot of that. But the drama of even the putt on 18 on the 72nd hole, you put Rory out there right now with 1,000 golf balls, and he probably sinks that 999 times. But the pressure of the moment to win the Masters and do it, and I thought he might be cooked in a playoff, and that he ended up on the same hole that he had just bogeyed with the same second shot. Like, where that even comes from is just, it's something I don't think that you and I can really understand, or that most people can understand, where he gets up on that tee and stripes another drive and then has identically the same shot that he had that he put into the bunker, except this time he gets it up there on the green and he spins it within a couple of feet. And, hey, listen, I like Justin Rose, nothing against him. Although I will say there is a little bit of that like Irish, North Ireland and English drama that I suppose you could appreciate. But, by all accounts, Justin Rose seems like a fine person. But
Sure.
it wouldn't have been about him anyway. It would have been
No.
about Rory gagging had this had happened again. And where did I see it? It was either going to be the best moment or the worst moment for Rory, and it turned out to be the best. And it was very rewarding. It was just a rewarding day. Like I said, I don't know that I would have stuck around if it was Scotty Scheffler. You know, I just don't know that I would have like gone out of my way to watch that. But because it was Rory and the drama and everything that's going on, even last year where he completely blows like a 3-shot lead with 4 to play or whatever it was
Yeah.
at the U.S. Open against Brooks Koepka, like he's like, I don't what's he capable of? I don't like, I have to watch this because I don't know what could happen here. Anything could happen in this situation, and then to go on that roller coaster ride with him where he wins it on the first playoff hole, which again, like, you have to go play that hole over again. Maybe it helped, maybe it didn't. I don't know, but I just thought it was something else. So good on him. It was just a really, really good sporting event. So we'll talk to
Yeah.
Steve Sands about it in some greater detail here, just narrowing down a time. But like you said, I mean, there's also the Padres, Michael King, first complete game. John did a little bit of research this past weekend. You found out that their sixth shutout came in 16 games, unlike last year where the sixth shutout came in how many games?
I believe it was their 101st game of the season on July 20th.
Yeah, it's pretty good pitching. Pretty good pitching, and you can certainly, you can use the caveat that you're playing the Rockies and you're
Thank
getting the
you.
Braves at the right time.
Yes.
You can definitely drop all the caveats that you want, but it's not like we've seen teams go 10-0 on a regular basis, regardless of who they're playing, with 6 shutouts and taking care of the Colorado Rockies, who have been a little bit of a pebble in the shoe, if you will. 6-0, 2-0, 8-0 in reverse chronological order. 6-0 Sunday, 2-0 Saturday, a game that I had zero exposure to due to SDFC, and then 8-0 on Friday night to get the weekend going. And 16-0 against the Colorado Rockies, a team that you thought, talking about the mental aspect of sports, no real reason why the Colorado Rockies should ever feel like they're comfortable against the Padres in this past weekend. Certainly not the case. So I think it's going to be a fun couple of days at Petco Park. Cubs fans usually show out when they come to town. Cubs are off to a pretty good start as well. We know what happened just a couple weekends back, dropping 2 out of 3, winning that getaway day before they went up to Sacramento. So I'm looking forward to it. I think I have tickets for Tuesday night, which I'm kind of excited about. Day game Wednesday. But, I think right now, are the Padres the best team in baseball? Well, the record says they are. Now, are they the standard or the standard bearer? I guess we'll have some time to figure that out. But, man, just to see, this was like the number one concern for me was, were they going to be able to get off to a quick start based on everything that had been said from the end of the postseason last year into the offseason and into spring training? And the answer, quite clearly, obviously, John, is yes and yes. And 13-3 is the best record in all of Major League Baseball, which wins you nothing on April 14th. We haven't even gotten our tax returns yet. And yet, here are the Padres who are just flying right now, absolutely flying. And again, the place looks amazing. And they just, even without Jackson Merrill and now Cronenworth's on the IL, which is something we kind of thought it was going to happen. on Friday, but we weren't sure. The bigger question, respectfully, for me was about Tatis, and Tatis does what Tatis does. He returns back after some sort of shoulder situation, and he homers because that's what he did pretty much for the entire 2021 season. Every time he would miss games, he would come back and he'd hit a home run in his
Yeah,
first or second at bat,
forgot
and it
about
feels
that.
like we're back to just watching Tatis, and he's playing at an MVP level. And you have to say, like, it's been a blast watching this team so far through the first 16 games.
It has been. It reminds me of the Tampa Bay Rays a couple years ago, started the season with 13, 14, 15 wins in a row, something like that, and then did not win their division by the end of the season. They still won almost 100 games, but they didn't just blow everyone out. They went through some really bad stretches there and ended up kind of coming back to the field. So the chances of the Padres going 13-3 for, every 16 game stretch for the rest of the season, probably not going to happen. They do have issues right now. Cronenworth's on the IL. His replacement, Iglesias, has been, really fun in the field, but he's batting 227. Jason Hayward, who they have not a lot of replacements for him at the moment, still batting 182 despite hitting an absolute freaking bomb yesterday. Lockridge has turned back into Lockridge. Before Jackson Merrill got hurt and Lockridge was kind of filling in here or there, I think his hitting stats looked really good. Now that he's forced to play every day with Jackson Merrill on the IL, he's hitting a buck 85. So, between that and the catching situation, they still have 3 to 4 spots in their lineup that are kind of zeros, but the pitching has been so good and the defense has been so good and the top of the lineup has been so good at building a lead. I saw a stat before yesterday, so I can probably do the math here. Just yesterday in the first inning, they said 4 of the Padres' 81 innings at Petco Park this year, the Padres have not held a lead for 4 of them. That means and yesterday they took a lead in the first, if I'm not mistaken. They did, and then they held on to it for 9. So now it's 96 out of 100 innings played at Petco Park. The Padres have had a lead. That's how you get to 10-0 at home. And some of that is pitching, and some of that is just Tatis in the leadoff spot is a certifiable win. He should probably be in the leadoff spot for the rest of his career. It's working out really, really well for him right now. Machado's playing well. Arise has come back into form. Sheets is still hitting, although I do have my concerns about that. Bogarts looks more like the guy that they thought they were getting. A lot of things are coming together, but it's really the pitching. But again, I talked to a friend of mine after yesterday's game when they completed the sweep, the shutout sweep, which 3 games, no runs. Good luck with that, Rockies. And my friend was like, man, what a great sweep. And I wrote back, I'm not really taking anything from this because that's how bad the Rockies look to me. This would be like if the Padres played a double-A team and just destroyed them. I wouldn't be like, man, the Padres are great. I'd be like, man, that double-A team freaking stinks. And that's how I feel about the Rockies. And my friend wrote back, he's like, yes, but if you recall, they have had some problems with this specific Rockies team in the last few years of putting them away when they should. And I was like, that's a really good point. So good on the Padres for taking care of business, for taking the wins when they're available, and for playing good baseball. They're playing good baseball now. And not even like it's not, again, not everything is going in the right direction for them. They still have holes. I still have questions about certain parts of the pitching staff, even though they're pitching well. I don't know what 6 innings of one hit ball means for Kyle Hart when it comes against the Rockies at Petco Park. Does that mean Kyle Hart can be expected to be really good going forward? I have no idea. That almost means nothing to me because of just how bad the Rockies are. The Rockies are so bad that I spent part of yesterday's game trying to come up with an idea that fans of a team should be allowed to vote an owner out. I don't know how that would functionally work, but I guarantee you if it worked, the Rockies and the A's would vote their owners out on the first day that it was available. So the Padres are awesome.
Yeah, and what would your campaign slogan be if you wanted Dick Monfort out of the Colorado Rockies, John? Go ahead. I'm going to put it on a tee for you here. What is your hashtag if you are a Rockies fan who wants to vote your owner out of the situation in Denver? Go ahead.
No more Dick. Get Dick out. Um, there's probably a good one here that I'm not thinking of that I should have thought more about. I was actually thinking about the John Fisher of it all. But yeah, someone could, I'm sure, come up with something that the fan
Okay.
base would rally behind.
Okay, yeah. But you would definitely have get Dick out.
Get
Something
Dick
in that.
out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, listen,
Remove the Dick.
you play the schedule. I mean, it is the schedule, and I think you're right to point out, and everybody's right to point out that it's a dreadful Colorado Rockies team. I think everybody understands that. But this is how you're supposed to play against dreadful teams. You're supposed to beat them 16-0,
Yeah.
and just completely hold them underwater for 3 straight days. And that's essentially what the Padres did. So, they were what, 8-5 against the Colorado Rockies last year. So, that you can just clobber this team and give them really no hope in thinking that they can even win a game on getaway day, to me is, if you're a good team, this is what you're supposed to do against the bottom feeders of Major League Baseball. And you got one of them. You don't have others, but you have one of them right here in your division. I mean, looking at these division standings with the Dodgers and with the Giants, and you figure the Diamondbacks will be a little bit better than this. I mean, you're gonna have to make your hay against the Colorado Rockies. It might come down to who plays best against the Colorado Rockies. You don't know. It'll probably come down to how you play head to head against LA, how you
Yeah.
play head to head against San Francisco would be my guess. But you don't want to be there at the end of the year being like, if we had a better record against the Colorado Rockies, maybe we would have fared better in the division and put ourselves in a more advantageous playoff position. So, listen, nobody knows what's going to happen in the next month, 5 months. So, it's just the sort of thing that you tuck away and you just move on to the next thing. And it was very professional and it was very well done from them. And I saw lots of, you know, I mean, I don't know what you're going to do with Michael King at this point. I would love to see Michael King stay as well. I don't know. You're going to be able to extend this guy. I mean, he's a couple months away from free agency. You just saw that Garrett Crochet signed a deal that was what, 6 for 180. He's a little bit younger. I heard a couple of other comps here, for neighborhood money that Michael King might be looking for. What's his name? Corbin Burns with the Arizona Diamondbacks signed for 6 and 200. Blake Snell signed for 5 and 180. What I was told from somebody who's in that space is that's about the neighborhood where Michael King thinks he should be. I don't have any disagreement on that. He's going to be 30 years old this year. But when you're a couple of months away from free agency, John, I sort of suspect that the idea of an extension is, I want to believe that Michael King really likes it here and he likes working with Ruben Niebla and, that he could really be a part of this pitching staff for the next 5-6 years. But I also feel like the other conversation that he's probably having with his representation is, we should probably be thinking about hitting the open market. But, if he likes it here and the Padres are able to put together a deal somewhere between 180 and $200 million, maybe he says yes to that. Maybe he says yes to that. He was open-minded to reworking his contract for this year and potentially for next year. So maybe there's some reason for optimism there. I don't have any optimism about Dylan Cease. Whether he has a beard or doesn't have a beard, totally irrelevant to me. But Michael King, maybe there's some reason for optimism, but I would suspect what he's looking for is Blake Snell or Corbin Burns, that kind of deal here, which is going to give you 5-6 years, somewhere between 180 and about 200.
All of that is fine. I'm not going to argue with any of that, except to say the two guys you just threw out as, let's just go, all three guys you threw out as comps. Garrett Crochet is 5 years younger, so it's a difficult comp to make because you're assuming you're probably a year or two into King's prime already, and Crochet might not yet be there, right? The other two guys you put out there as comps, Blake Snell and Corbin Burns, have won the Cy Young Award. Like recently won the Cy Young Award, both of them. So this is one of those things like we can be like, hey, the Padres are 13-3. It doesn't really mean a lot. It's early in the season. A lot can happen. Like to have this conversation 4 games into the season when King has an ERA of 2.42 and I don't have his whip up here, but probably a stupid, ridiculous whip, is maybe it would be in the interest of King and his agent, but maybe not in the interest of the Padres. It's one of those things that you kind of have to roll the dice and be like, I guess if he wins the Cy Young Award, we have a conversation with him and see what he wants price point. But if he also, has a couple bad months and it evens out, then maybe his price comes down a little bit. I don't know. I'm glad it's not my money. I'm glad that King's on this team. And, I like the comp of him as kind of a right-handed Snell, where it's like his stuff is just so nasty that if he can figure out how to land it in the strike zone, he's going to have a really good game. And if he can't, it's going to be a little rougher for him. But he pitched 100 innings in 2023, and that was his career high. He pitched 173 last year, so beating his career high by 70 innings. My question is that sustainable? Can he go 170 innings again this year, plus a playoff performance? Or is he at some point going to run into some sort of wear and tear on his arm, right? He doesn't look like a guy who puts a lot of stress on his arm, but he's getting a lot of movement on the pitches, which makes me think there's torque happening in there somewhere. Yeah, I don't know. The contract situation is I really hope he ends up pitching for the Padres for like 5 more years, because he seems like a great pitcher. Everyone seems to like him, and you love watching pitchers that just have unhittable stuff, right? They can be frustrating sometimes, but most of the time they're just really fun.
Yeah, and free agency, at least philosophically, is not paying players for what they've done, but paying players for what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And if you really feel optimistic about what it is the King's going to bring you over the next 4 or 5 years, then maybe 160 sounds a little rich, maybe 170 sounds a little rich, but if that's what the going rate is, the Padres don't get to set the market. The market is the market. So the market is what the market suggests these guys are worth. And when you just see those 3 deals in particular, because that's the area that I was told by somebody who would know, like, to just it's that vicinity is what everybody's sort of chattering about. But I don't know. I just tend to think a guy that's a couple of months away from free agency is probably inclined to think, well, why don't I get? I'm only going to get a chance to do this once. Maybe he wants to go explore what free agency is. Nothing against the Padres, but maybe he just wants to be that kind of player. So,
and maybe he's one of these random guys who's like, man, I really love Florida. I would love to live there someday, or San Francisco, or Toronto. Like, you never know. It's just like all of us, you find an affinity. What's the word I'm looking for?
Affinity?
Not affiliate.
Maybe he woke up today and had an earthquake and was like, "Yo, I gotta think about moving on."
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I just got a message from my daughter's teacher that her class was outside playing field hockey when the earthquake happened. They have no idea it happened. They didn't feel it at all.
Oh, that's good.
Best news ever.
Ignorance is bliss. Yet again, even further evidence that ignorance is completely bliss. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, the Grit Squad. Do you like that name?
No.
You got a bunch of $300 million contracts on this team. Like, hey, Grit Squad. I've seen Manny at the fashion shows, everybody. All right. I don't know. Whatever. It's working for them. So vibes are good. 13-3. And again, always fun when the Cubs are in town. So looking forward to that as well.
Hey,
Trying to make my way down there.
Before we move off the Padres, I'm going to ask you a random thing. So there's a guy on the Angels who's having a great season, who before this has been like a terrible player, right? Do you know what I'm talking about? Kyron something?
Do not.
Okay, so there's this kid on the A's, Kyron Paris. He's the second baseman. And Kyron Paris was kind of a heralded prospect, came up, I think, to 2023. He was bad. 2024, he was worse. And he showed up to spring training in 2025, and he's been mashing. In 14 games, he has 5 home runs. He has an OPS plus right now of 271. If you're wondering why the Angels are good, it's because this kid is mashing. And when they asked him what changed from last year to this year, his answer was basically that he completely gave up his old swing, decided to try and copy Aaron Judge's swing, which is funny because Aaron Judge is what, like 6'10"? Kyron Paris is 5.
Yes, he's big.
Kyron Paris is 5'11". And he decided that the best way to improve his odds of being a good baseball player is to just quit his old swing and steal Aaron Judge's swing. And I think this is
6'7",
crazy. 6'7". I said 6'10". I wasn't that far off. I think this is crazy that an MLB baseball player would just be like, I'm going to quit my swing and everything that's brought me here, and I'm going to copy someone else's swing, and that's going to work better for me. But I was already thinking about this, and then I saw a clip that was on MLB Network, I believe. It might have been on Fox, but I think it was on MLB Network, where a couple of former baseball players were comparing Jackson Merrill's swing to Freddie Freeman's swing and saying this is the exact same swing. And they were actually wondering whether Jackson, who was a successful minor league player, at some point had gone like, hey, Freddie's the guy I want to emulate, therefore I'm going to copy his swing. And they were breaking it down. They're like, Freddie's swing is not a standard swing. It's a little different, and it's because his hands are here and he kind of has to catch up to the ball, and it almost doesn't feel like it's going to work, but it works because he's so quick to get around. And they just had them side by side and they kept playing them. And I was like, that's really interesting to me that players are starting to just grab on other players and being like, that's the guy I want to emulate. I will borrow his swing.
Well, I mean, dude, I mean, what is the point of a hitting coach then? I mean, isn't this the job of the hitting coach to say, hey, this is the best way for you to find success in the major leagues, is for me to let you know that, I mean, does the hitting coach agree that this guy should be swinging like Aaron Judge? Because not everybody can swing like Aaron Judge. And the whole point of Aaron Judge is that he's got a swing that will produce a ton of power. So, yeah. I mean, does the hitting coach agree with this, or is the hitting coach just an afterthought in this conversation?
I don't know, but I do know that when he showed up and he started mashing in spring training, they started like trading away players that were in his way so that they could get him to, or maybe cutting the Moniak, that guy,
Mickey Moniak.
Mickey Moniak. Mickey Moniak was either traded away or cut, basically to create space for this guy in the lineup, because they were like, well, I guess we got mini Aaron Judge on the team now. It's very interesting to me. I like when players have the same swing or copy something from each other. I used to love those stories about Yu Darvish being in the clubhouse and bullpen or whatever, and guys trying to steal his pitches or him stealing their pitches and going like, how do you hold it? Okay, I'll throw that the next game. I love when players like kind of copy from each other. But you're right. This is the job of the hitting coach or the pitching coach. It's just interesting to me.
All right. So we do have some confirmation here. Steve Sands of the Golf Channel. So do you want to do a quick SDFC couple of thoughts and then actually talk to a guest who knows Rory McIlroy pretty well, who I was texting with a little bit during the final round yesterday, who can give us a little bit of perspective. Colorado Rapids 3, SDFC 2. Listen, I was broadcasting the game. I thought it was a really exciting game from start to finish. There was a lot of drama in it. There was 5 goals in it. I really thought that SDFC was going to at least equalize late in this match, but they couldn't. I don't think they played. I mean, the midfield to me, maybe, and it's only match day 8. Maybe as a unit, the midfield had its worst game. I'm going to give a lot of credit to Colorado. There's good players on the Colorado Rapids. 2 years ago, this was the worst team in the Western Conference. They brought in a new coach. They brought in some new players. Georgi Mihailovic, to me, is really, really playing. I watched some of their games last week. He jumps off the screen at you. Bassett is a really good player, a homegrown player for them. Their striker, their Brazilian striker, who it looks like Navarro, but it is Navajo. Let's save that for a different podcast. They started a 20-year-old at striker because they're getting fed up with one of their designated players. He ended up earning a penalty and scoring a goal, probably a man of the match kind of performance there for Darren Yappy. And yet, all of that being said, at 5,100 plus feet of elevation, playing in an environment where you could see it on the players' faces, having what I thought was a curious penalty called against them. I haven't seen a replay that's convincing to me, not trying to sound like a homer here. A set piece goal and then, a defensive breakdown. I'm not saying that the better team lost. That's not what my point is. I think the better team probably won. But all that being said, John, is SDFC had a chance late in this game at least to steal a point, perhaps more, away at Colorado on a night where a lot of things really went wrong. And, the one thing I think we can safely say about SDFC, and it's not loser talk, this is pro sports. So I don't want to sit around talking about silver linings and all that sort of stuff. But the one thing we can say for certain, if we're going to go to a boxing analogy here, is this team does not have a glass jaw. They lost this fight by decision, but, there was a time at 3-1 where I thought I was worried that they were going to get knocked out, and they didn't. And they cut it to 3-2 in the 89th minute, and they were throwing a ton of pressure at Colorado. Give credit to Zach Steffen, who's had a little bit of a renaissance here with Colorado. Good news if you're a fan of the U.S. men's national team that Zach Steffen seems to be playing himself back into serious consideration for the World Cup in 2026. But I didn't find, there were some mistakes made I thought that I thought they got outplayed in the midfield, which is not something I think we've said at all this season. And all of that still late into the match, SDFC still had a chance to steal a point in this one. But I thought a really, really entertaining game again on Saturday night.
Did you say last week that SDFC, Mikey Varys had subbed in 5 players,
Mm-hmm.
the
Every
maximum
match.
in every match?
Only coach, only team to have done it, to have used all 5 subs in each match so far this season.
Did you also say that no other coach had used 5 subs in any matches, or was it just go ahead?
No. He's just the only one to have done it in each
Every
match,
game. Okay.
and that is again now true because he used all 5 subs in this one.
And so
And his
did
fifth
Colorado.
sub, by the way, scored the second goal of the night. So
he did, and I have a question about that. We'll get to that, but Colorado also did 5 subs in this game, which I thought was interesting. So Tomas Anhal came in for Chucky and scored a goal. Local kid Milan Ulaski. I got that.
Yep.
He came in for Godoy. Now is Ulaski's a midfielder, right?
Correct.
So that's
Escondido
a midfielder
kid. So
that's a
he's
midfielder
probably at his
replacing
parents'
a
house
midfielder.
dealing with that earthquake, like a lot of us.
He probably is. Alex Mighton came in for Luca De La Torre after Luca's goal, but Alex Mighton is not a midfielder. So I'm assuming Dreyer or Valakari had to bounce back to the midfield to make room for
Valakari bounced back to the Luca De La Torre spot. They put they call him Tommy. I get kind of confused on the air. His name is Tomas Angel, but they call him Tommy. You know the way athletes are, Tommy Angel.
Tommy
Angel.
But
Tomas came in and he looked like he was playing a little bit more centrally.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was Milan that was playing more centrally, and it was Tomas that was playing a little bit more on the left. But yeah, they were just throwing attackers. At one point they had like 4 or 5 attackers in the game, and they were just trying to do everything and anything that they could, realizing that Colorado was just trying to kill the match off. So they just threw Mighton out there, and they had Ulaski out there, and Valakari stayed out there, and Dreyer, who played all 90 minutes, even though he looked like he was so tired at the end of this game. You could just see the looks on their faces.
They all looked tired.
Man, they just looked like they were so tired. And he had an opportunity late. He had that assist, had an assist on the Angel goal. So, I mean, again, I know you don't get any points for moral victories here, but they were throwing everything they had there at Colorado in the last 10 minutes of the match or so.
I get really interested by players playing positions they don't normally play, right? When back in the old Bolton Blue Chargers days, I got into it with Kasim Osgood, who I noticed was playing safety on Hail Mary plays, like for the Chargers defense. And then it turned into a thing where he was trying to get the team to literally play him at safety on defense because there was no opportunity for him on offense because he wasn't a good enough wide receiver. So that's why I was asking about this. Also, there was a play, and I know I've seen this in the EPO before, but I don't think it's ever been successful. There was a corner kick for SDFC where Dos Santos came up and tried to be a part of the action, almost like the goalie was going to head it into the goal. I know I've seen that before at the end of games, but it was just really cool to see. And I was like, one of these days, I really want Dos Santos to score a goal. It would just be fun. It's probably never going to happen, but it would just be fun.
Yeah, I love it. I love it when it does. Liverpool had a moment like that earlier this season where they threw their goalkeeper all the way up there and he ended up scoring.
It's so good the few times that it actually happens. But yeah, I mean, what you can walk away from is exactly what you said in the beginning. These are 2 good teams. San Diego was on the road. The air is thin, and they were going up against a really good team, and they almost pulled it out, right? They almost got a tie. The penalty call was absolute bullshit. Even the Apple TV crew was like, "Oh, I don't think I would have called that one."
Yeah, I'm gonna watch it later today. So
I think the analyst, who I don't remember what it was, said, and if I remember his exact words, he was like, according to the rule book, that is a penalty, but it's negligible, and I don't think it should have been called. And they were basically saying Dos Santos wasn't trying to get in the way of someone who was trying to score. He was trying to get the ball.
The ball's loose out there.
Yeah, and it's in the middle of a bunch of bodies, and he jumps on it, and the guy trips over him, and it's like, why should that be a penalty? But anyway, it was a good game. Here's the thing: we're what, eight games in? 8 games in for San Diego FC. They've yet to embarrass themselves in any form or fashion. They've yet to even have a bad game. Really, they've had bad moments, but I don't think they've had a bad game. And that's, I mean, for an expansion team, that's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably right. And I thought it was pretty easy around the 60th minute to go, okay, like this feels like it might be the clunker here, right?
Yeah.
Because you get the equalizer with Luca De La Torre in the 49th minute, and then what do they do 4 minutes later? They
Bang
score on a
bang.
set piece, right? They score on this weird sort of picket fence looking play, which was a good design, and the ball's sort of loose in the box, and Yappy just gets a toe on it and gets it past CJ Dos Santos, and then they score again in the 60th. And I know the altitude stuff sometimes can be a little bit overdone, but now here you have guys huffing and puffing, and everybody will tell you it's right about like that 60 to 70 minute mark where you really hit the wall, where you really hit the wall. And now you're down 3-1, hostile environment. Although I got to give a ton of credit to the 135 or so fans from San Diego, the Frontera SD fans who made their way up there, who
They
could
were
be heard,
awesome.
I was told, during the broadcast. We could hear it during the broadcast, who had smoke, who had a lot of fun stuff going on there. If you were following them on social media, they greeted the team at the hotel. That was amazing. There were people that were writing about how good the SDFC fans,
How do
the
you think
away fans, were at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. So I do want to give them a huge shout here as well. But
how do you think wait, how do you think they got those giant flags to Denver?
it's funny you say that, because I was looking at the pictures and I know they had to check their drums. Obviously, when you're traveling, you can do that stuff. But I was wondering, how do those flagpoles must be
Extend?
collapsible? Yeah,
Yeah, they must. It was huge, huge flags.
yeah. Unless you're buying those there. But I was like, wow, that was great. So yeah, I know everybody wants a rivalry with the two LA teams, but sometimes I think Colorado might be, they're a good team and good players, and it's a city. These are two cities that there's plenty of history between Chargers and Broncos, between Padres and Rockies, and now maybe a little bit between the Rapids and SDFC. So I'm open minded about this potentially becoming a Western Conference type rivalry situation between Rapids and SDFC. I'm hopeful for it, and I think, John, you pointed out that there were some people that were covering the Rapids in Denver that have said, yeah, like why not? They have closer geographic teams that they will compete with. Salt Lake City, for instance, that's considered the chief rival for the Colorado Rapids.
Right.
So I don't know that you're going to be able to just go and snatch that away from them, but I'm open minded too, especially when you got a 3.5 hour flight and lots of history between the sports teams all throughout the year. So I like it, but I don't think there's any real shame in losing. I think there's a lot of things probably to clean up. I thought that there were some scoring opportunities that again, to use Mikey Varis's word, they still got to be a little more ruthless in front of the goal. But even to make that, even to put that decision to make it, even in doubt at that point, and I would have bet money on them finding an equalizer late, because they've done it before. I saw them do it twice at Real Salt Lake, where they scored twice in stoppage time, but wasn't meant to be. They had a couple of opportunities that I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, I did see Dreyer get in there. I saw Kamado Willie had a ball right at his feet all by himself, and he just couldn't get it to the right foot. So they had opportunities, and again, and this is a team that doesn't seem like it'll get knocked out. I mean, they might lose a fight on points, but they're not gonna get knocked out. Now, the real challenge is they have to play away again, and this time they have to go even further, and they have to go to Charlotte. So there's going to be a real short week of prep, and they'll
Charlotte's
have
really
to.
good.
Yeah, and Charlotte's been a really good team, but still sitting third in the Western Conference is SDFC. And, they haven't been playing with Marcus Ingvartson, who's going to be out for a little while longer. One of the things Adrian Garcia Marquez and I talked about is how you decide between Tomas Angel and Oni Valakari, who it is exactly that you'll want to start, let's say, next week. I really like Angel a lot, but, I think there's a reason why he's coming in the, 80th minute for
I
the
think he's
last couple
good.
of
I think
weeks.
he's good coming in at the end. He brings
Yeah.
a ton of energy.
And, two totally different assignments. Last week it was go kill off the match. This week it's, hey, like, get us back in the match.
Yeah.
And he was up for it both times. So, and the other frustrating thing is, listen, they want to play out of the back. I mean, that's just the way that they are. And it's going to lend itself to some mistakes. And we've seen that since the end of the game against Seattle back at home, where they almost gave up a goal late because they were trying to play out of the back. And I thought they got themselves in a little bit of trouble with that this past weekend against Colorado. But that's the way the head coach wants them to play. And I think people need to understand this, because I know it's really easy, right? And I'm in the broadcast booth with Warren Barton, who's an old defender. And he's probably sitting there going, boot it out of there. Just
Yeah.
boot it out of there. But you're not Chris McVay. And if you're Chris McVay and you just boot it out of there, like everybody who's yelling at the television wants you to do, then you might get benched because that's not the way the manager wants you to play. For as good as McVay has been, just booting it out of there is not the style that they want to play with. So, you have to, especially now that Andres Reyes is back, they made a trade for the center half with New York Red Bulls. He's been healthy the last couple of weeks, hasn't been able to get into the match. But now that you're looking and you're seeing that there's another center half who's sitting right there, who they made a big trade to go and acquire in the offseason, you got to do what the manager wants you to do. It's really easy just to yell and go, just kick it out of there. Kick it 40 yards down the field. Don't put yourself in trouble. But that's the way they want to play. And when you have another option that's sitting over there, you're going to do what the coach tells you to do, even if it means that you're going to make a mistake. The coach has told you, I'd rather you play our style and make a mistake than not play our style and play it safe. So, again, I hear everybody going, I'm laughing. I don't know that Warren actually said that, and I'm just, I love him. But you can picture him being an old defender going, boot it out. But it's just not the way they're going to play, and they will live with their mistakes. They will hope to correct their mistakes before they switch their style of play. And I just think that's important for everybody to know and understand. That if you're one of these center backs, this is what they want you to do. This is what they're asking you to do. So, I wouldn't expect them to just dramatically start shifting. And again, they're still third in the Western Conference, and they've had 4 wins and a couple of draws now and a couple of losses. So, they're doing something right here, and they feel like they're going to get really a lot better at it. But it will be a tough turnaround here to go all the way to Charlotte against a really, really good team in a great environment, and they've got good players as well. So it'll be a blast. All right. Well, John, listen, I'm going to connect with Steve Sands. So Steve Sands of the Golf Channel will either join us when we come back, or Steve Sands of the Golf Channel will join us on a totally separate podcast.
Sure.
Or Steve Sands of the Golf Channel will join us perhaps even on Tuesday. But we've got a lot to still discuss, and I hope everybody had a great weekend. And most importantly, again, we talked about Masters, Padres, SDFC. Hopefully everybody's safe from whatever it was, this 6.0 magnitude earthquake that happened while we were doing this earlier. So I know that kind of knocked us a little bit for off our rhythm, but we'll connected with Sands. So that's either going to come up next or,
or that'll be tomorrow or something.
Or it could be tomorrow. But thank you to everybody again for subscribing. I keep seeing the emails coming in. I want to say thank you so much to Octavio.
Yes.
Who did send us a really, really nice note over the weekend. It is so appreciated what it is that you are doing. And you've been supportive of us since Bandwagon Beach, since the Unemployed podcast. So we do appreciate that. Octavio Fuentes, thank you so much. You subscribed for a full year. And we're still working on some of those details too. So we're going to get that squared away now that we have a little bit of time. But we do appreciate everybody who has subscribed, everybody that has signed up, whether you're just going to give it a test run or whether you're going to donate on a monthly basis or commit to a larger subscription. We can't thank you enough. Go to 1904, section1904.com, and you can get all the information on that. And stay tuned. More to come.